Hello, everyone. I am the historical fiction author Julia Kelly, author of The Light Over London and the upcoming Whispers of War. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about something I get asked more than anything else in terms of like my process of writing. So people come up and they're always really curious about being an author, and they want to know, how do I do it? How do I find the time? Because I also work a day job. So the single biggest question I get asked is how I find the time to write and how other people can do the same. So first, I think it's really important to let you guys know the kind of way that my life looks right now, and acknowledge some things that are or are not helpful in terms of finding time for writing. So first of all, I am unmarried, I don't have a partner, and I don't have kids. Now that both is helpful and not helpful in terms of writing time. There's nobody sharing household management with me. It's on me to get the groceries, to get the laundry done, to vacuum the house, to cook, to clean, to do the gardening, all of that stuff. That's all comes down to me. I'm also not managing, childcare, helping my partner figure out how we're going to sort of jointly manage our household. So there are definitely give and takes there that are big parts of how I'm going to talk about addressing how I make the time to write, and maybe give you some ideas about how you can do that as well. So I think that's always good to know and good to lay out there. I think probably the biggest thing that I like to tell people when they do mention that they want to write a book, but they just haven't found the time and all of those things, is that if you really want to do it, you're going to have to prioritize it. And you're going to have to decide that it is something that really, really fundamentally is motivating you in your life, right? So you have other things that you could be doing with your time if you're really dedicated to a particular sport, if you have a lot of family obligations going on, things like that. Or if you decide that you really feel strongly about watching a bunch of Netflix shows and you gain a lot of pleasure from that, that's great. All those things are also taking away from your writing time or your potential writing time. So sometimes it's helpful to put something aside and say that's not going to be a priority for me for a little bit. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and try to draft a book. And I've definitely done that. So there are periods of time where I see friends and family a little bit less than I normally would, because my day job takes the first priority, because that's what's paying the bills. And then writing takes equal priority in my life, and I make sure that I can make that balance happen. But I also say no to a lot of things. Saying no was a really big part of learning to prioritize my writing time. So things like, I lived in New York City. I was in my 20s. So a lot of what you do is sort of go out to dinner, go out for brunches, things like that. And so I decided, first of all, I wasn't going to say yes to a lot of those invitations. I wasn't going to go to things where I didn't see myself potentially enjoying it, whether it's because there are some people in your life that you do pick up over time who maybe aren't the healthiest for you to be around. So that really helped acknowledge that there were some people who I didn't really want to spend my time around. But also I made it very clear with my friends, I have a limited amount of time to see you guys. When I am not with you, I'm working or I'm writing. So I need to be mindful of that, because I did have some friends who were habitually a half hour late to various events. So we nipped that in the bud by addressing it and talking about it and explaining, I am at the point in my career where I really need as much time as possible to focus on my writing. This was well before I was published. But when I did have an agent, and I was very serious about it. So I would say there are a couple things that you can do and take away from that. First of all is explaining to the people in your life why this is important to you, why you want to make this a priority, can be really, really helpful. Whether that is just you want to challenge yourself to try to do something you've never done before, if you have a story that you've been wanting to tell for your entire life and you see it as a book and you really want to make that happen, or something as simple and straightforward as what it was for me. I can't imagine not writing, so I want to make this my career and I want to make this my life, and I need their help in order for me to get there. So that I found really helpful. I also found it really helpful to carve out time wherever I could. So this is probably the biggest thing that I would recommend to people, is look at your life and figure out where you have time that you could steal away. So this is going to require a bit of an adjustment of thinking. I meet a lot of people who are writers who say, I can only write after 9 p.m. I can only write, in the morning before I go to work, something like that. I used to be a journalist, and one of the things that you learn as a journalist is if you can't write anytime, any place, anywhere, under any circumstance, you're not going to be a journalist for very long. You really do need to be able to do all of these things and do your job consistently across the board, because otherwise you're not going to get called for work or you're going to be fired from your staff position. So I really think that if you can possibly break any preciousness you have about your writing time or your writing space, you'll do yourself a big favor. So that includes sort of these stories that we tell ourselves about, oh, I can only write under these conditions. I can only write in a coffee shop. I can only write when it's incredibly quiet, in my flat, whatever it is. I typically will write most often in the evenings because that's the way that my schedule works out. But there have been times, especially when writing The Light Over London and editing The Light Over London, where I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning in order to make sure I could get my work done before I went to work, because that was the time in my life where I was going to be able to steal that time away. So I think breaking yourself of the habit of, these stories that you tell yourself can be really useful. The other thing that you can do in terms of stealing time is literally taking time away from different things. So if you're lucky enough to have a lunch break where you can actually sit down somewhere and do some work, I do write on my lunch breaks from time to time. I used to be in New York City, where I commuted on public transit, so I did a lot of writing on the train up to the Bronx. I did a lot of dictating while I was walking through Central Park and going other places, so I think that's definitely a possibility. If you are going out somewhere and you know that you're going to be a little earlier than everybody else, I have written in bars, in coffee shops, in hotel lobbies, in various places, just because even a few words that you can either scribble down in a notebook you have, or on your phone or on an iPad or something that's portable, if you carry your laptop with you, that can be really useful as well. I think also you can help yourself out in terms of, again, having the tools to write with you at all times. So I am a Scrivener user. So my Scrivener syncs up to my laptop, my iPad, and my iPhone as well. So I always have my manuscript available to me, so long as I keep it synced, no matter where I am. I know a lot of people who use Google Docs. I know a lot of people who have Word or a Notes app on their phones, and they're just stealing time here and there. And there are authors who've written entire books this way, by just doing a little bit at a time. So when you're doing a first draft, I think this is one of the best ways that you can get words down, is just constantly remind yourself that you have the ability to get these words down on the page because you have the tools with you, and make it very easy to access this type of stuff. So there, with writing advice, is no hard and fast rule about when to write, what to write, how to write, any of these things. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of how to jumpstart your writing if it's something you've always wanted to do, if you're trying to do a bit more of it, if you're doing NaNoWriMo and you're trying to steal time to make sure that you're getting those words done. All of those things can be hopefully useful, and you can find your own process and a way to make sure that you are getting the book that you want to write written. So good luck. If you do use any of these tips, or if you have ones of your own that you think would be useful, please drop them in the comments. I would love to see all the different ways that you guys are able to build on your writing time and make sure that you're getting your writing done and making sure it's a priority as well. Also, if you have tips for conversations to have with people in your life about how to talk about your book, if you want to kind of enlist their help, that would be really, really great to hear as well, and I'd be super curious about that. Don't forget to hit subscribe to this channel. I'll be doing a lot more writing kind of guidelines and advice, as well as some updates about my own books and various other pieces of bonus content as well. Thank you so much, and I'll do one of these videos again sometime soon.